Assalamu alaikum. Let's cook. I do not feel sorry for white American women. Somebody asked me this question in the past before about whether or not I feel sorry for white American women. And the reason why this question was asked is because it's undeniable now that we see from the news, from social media, every day that white American women have to marry the biggest male monsters, family annihilators, serial killers in the world. And these are men who have it easier than any other man in the world, okay? Yet these women are still going through this. These guys are killing them, killing their children every day. They're beaten up by these guys, R-worded, abused, all kind of stuff. These guys have pictures of their children, CSAM stuff, all kinds of disgusting things. And they asked me, yo, do you feel sorry for them knowing that, they got to deal with that and go with that? And my answer is no. My answer is no. I know that white women are literally dealing with these male monsters every day, toughing it out. White women really don't care about white supremacy and Satanism, okay? This is a bad thing, but white women don't care about that. They just want to be in a position to uphold it with the same power as white men. And that's what a feminist is. That's an American feminist, okay? That's what they want. They want to be in a position to uphold it with the same power as white men. So when they complain, that's what they're complaining about. That is a feminist. They show you this every chance they get. I mean, you can go back to the slavery plantations in American history. White women were upset because they were excluded from the benefits and property and things that men got. That's it. They weren't mad about chattel slavery and what was going on in the genocide. No, not at all. They were mad because they wanted to be in a position to reap all the benefits of it that white men did, okay? And actually, white women on plantations, they treated black women horribly. They played a major role in getting black women killed, lynched, sent away, separated from their children. And it got even worse when a black woman got married or she was with a black man that liked her. And these white women would become jealous because they wanted to be with these black men most of the time. So, these black women, they caught hell. They caught hell. And remember, white American men always treated white women horribly. I mean, terribly. They thought so low of white women that they actually allowed black men to vote before white women. You actually allow people that you hate the right to vote before your own women. Now, please don't get that confused with these white men saying, oh, we want to give black men rights and let them vote and all this other stuff. That's not white peopling. That's not how it works. And of course, they had all kinds of other situations and roadblocks in front of that anyway. So it's not like black men were getting up saying, oh, I'm going to go vote for this to better my... No, that ain't how it works. White people don't operate like that. But we see now why these family annihilators are in the news. They're doing what they're doing. This is very normal. It's part of the culture. White men have always hated and treated white women bad. Now, as time goes on, these white women, they're tired of it. They want to start these feminist movements, okay? They're miserable. They want rights for themselves. They say, hey, we want to be able to exercise white supremacy and Satanism with the same power of the men. That's a feminist. I mean, it is what it is. So we can go back to something called the Seneca Falls Convention. They had this convention in Seneca Falls, New York, July 19th and 20th in the year of 1848. So we have these white feminist women, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott. They're getting this whole thing together. I've made numerous videos about them on our original channel in the past. And at this convention, they issued a declaration of sentiments. And they were there to demand greater legal and economic and educational and political rights for women. Okay, this was for women. Of course, this was for white women. And in that also was the right to vote. Now, they were upset. Yes, black men were eventually given a right to vote 50 years before white women. Okay, now here's the thing. So we have these women feminists or these suffrage women, Lucretia Mott, Elizabeth Stanton, Susan B. Anthony or whatever. They have this big old situation in Seneca Falls, New York, where they're going to go ahead and try to get rights for women. And they invite one black person. And that one black person that they invited was Frederick Douglass, okay? Now, Frederick Douglass was invited to this Seneca Falls Convention because he was already connected personally and politically to the abolitionist women who organized it, okay? He was already sympathetic to women's equality. So a woman by the name of Elizabeth McClintock actually was the one who invited Frederick Douglass. Okay, she was another one of these suffragists, abolitionists, and Frederick Douglass was all into that. He was very active in the Western New York Anti-Slave Society. He gotten to know this white woman named McClintock, and he accepted the invite on July 14th, 1848. Frederick Douglass said, okay, he wrote her back, okay, I will go to this convention. I see what you are about. Now, again, people, they invited Frederick Douglass because he is an abolitionist and he's already connected with these people. He's a public speaker. He's a newspaper publisher. He lives in Rochester, New York, also, by the way, which is close to where they at. So it's easy for him to get there. And he also has this North Star, okay? Frederick Douglass has the North Star. And Frederick Douglass's North Star, his newspaper called the North Star, he always supported women's rights from the beginning. That was one of the primary missions of his paper or his goal. It was black equality and women's rights. You know, he said, right is of no sex, truth is of no color. That is what was on his publication, his paper. Right is of no sex, truth is of no color. The first part, that's for the white women. The second part, truth is of no color, that is for black people. Now, don't ever get that confused with that being black women. So Frederick Douglass, he was fighting for equal rights for black people and also equal rights for white women. So some people are thinking, I get it. Frederick Douglass is fighting for rights for black people. That's what he should do, right? But they're thinking, well, why is he being a champion for women's rights? What's that all about? Well, that's because Frederick Douglass, he loves white women. I mean, when he's fighting for women's rights, this is not black women. This is white women, okay? He was already in with the abolitionist movement, a bunch of white women. And Frederick Douglass, he just loved white women and everything about him. When his wife, Anna Murray Douglass, passed away, this is the black woman who did everything for him, bought him his clothes, sold his clothes, all that, put him on. When she passed away, the first thing he did was he went and married him a white woman. I've done a few videos about this in the past. I mean, these white women were already in the house with his black wife, Anna Murray Douglass, being very disrespectful to her when she was alive. That's a whole nother story. Sometimes you don't really know who people are until you see what they do with their power and their opportunity. And with his opportunity, yes, Frederick Douglass did go get the snow bunny. Now, he supported their movement, okay? But these white women showed him who they really are. Once they seen that black men had the right to vote before them, they all turned on Frederick Douglass and black people and showed their true colors. Now, these white women feminist leaders, they started running around with a white supremacist speaker by the name of George Francis Train, okay? Popular guy. Elizabeth Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, to be exact. They running around with this guy, George Francis Train, his name is. He had a lot of money, he was rich, and he was very openly overt racist to black Americans. He was that N-word diss type that you would know now. So he's running around with the same women that Frederick Douglass was championing in their movement. This guy right here, George Francis Train, he opposed black political equality, and he used his rhetoric and his speeches to support women's suffrage. He was about women's suffrage, okay? That's true, but he was also anti-black. And the reason why he supported women's suffrage or women's rights is because in his belief was that women's votes would counterbalance black male political power. This cracker is thinking about white supremacy, and that's it. So Frederick Douglass, he found out that these white women who he thought were cool with him, they were running around with this white supremacist cracker. He didn't agree with it. They had some back and forth words. These white women told him, listen, black men should never be allowed to vote before educated white women. And that's it in a nutshell, man. These women, they knew that they could use Frederick Douglass for what they needed him for. And Frederick Douglass was a go-hard for their struggle. You could look on the front of his North Star. At the top of it, it always mentions them having rights, in addition to black people. But the white women is always right there, okay? These are the type of women who hate his wife. They don't like him. They don't like black people. And that's all they really care about, see? And, they wanted to use Frederick Douglass. It worked. And this is why I don't feel sorry for them at all. This is the history. This is the mindset. This is how they act. They're doing speeches with him. They're letting this guy write at their newspaper publication, and after that, they had some back and forth with Frederick Douglass. He's like, I'm not feeling that, you shouldn't, be running around with this guy. He's saying this, and that. And these white women responded, listen, there's no reason why black men should be able to vote before educated white women, and they were all about themselves, okay? That's white women in general. They don't mind being a racist, you know what I'm saying? And all that stuff about feminism, that's what it is. Even Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was a real women's rights suffragist, okay? Black woman. She was all about lifting her people up. And in the year 1913, Ida B. Wells founded something called Chicago's Alpha Suffrage Club. Now, this was an organization aimed at mobilizing black women politically. Now, with this club, Ida B. Wells traveled to Washington, D.C. for this big women's suffrage march that they're going to have, March 3rd, 1913, okay? Ida B. Wells and her crew go there, but the white women suffragists, these so-called white feminists, whatever, they didn't want to march alongside black women. They told Ida B. Wells and her crew, like, listen, y'all can't march unless you go into the back. They wanted Ida B. Wells and her crew to go to the back. Ida B. Wells wasn't going for it. She wasn't even going for it from a white man when she was young. So, she wasn't going for it for no white suffrage women or whatever. And she said, I came here as an Illinois suffragist. I'm marching with my state, and that's what I'm going to do, or I'm not going to take part at all. So that's what she did. You know what I mean? They didn't want no smoke with Ida B. Wells. So we know from our history that this is a group of people, these white American feminists, who will use our energy and our strength as long as it benefits them. Now, as time goes on, we have this next wave of white women's movements. Okay, this next one, we'll say around the 1960s through the 80s. They had something called NOW, or the National Organization for Women. It was founded in the year 1966. Now, this group right here, they were seeking equal rights, for things like employment discrimination, equal pay, reproductive rights, education, marriage, divorce laws, sexuality, and women's roles with families and things like that for women, okay? This is for women, and it's for white women. So we know that from the history with Ida B. Wells and Sojourner Truth, for people like that. These white women will fight and only fight for themselves, their own white people. Unfortunately, we have a lot of our people bamboozled into thinking like, oh, this is for black women. They're doing this for us. No, this is not how white peopling works. What they will do, though, is they'll hire a few shinebone Negroes to go out and act like they are working for the betterment of black women, and they'll get a celebrity or whatever, but it's never like that. Even when you look at the so-called black women's empowerment groups now, the ones that get the most promotion, that are all in the news, commercialized. I'm not talking about all of them. I'm talking about the ones that they want you to see the most. Celebrities, Oprah, things like that, or whoever. You'll notice that the information that they give black women at the core is for their demise in the long run. I mean, they may present something up front that might look okay, but these people study. They know we can feed them this, and then in the long run, this is what's going to happen. And you'll notice that most of the time they'll be sponsored and promoted by white supremacist billionaires or groups, white supremacist men like the LGG, the Skittles organization, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, these people they don't like black people at all. There's no way that somebody can be pro-black and for black people and partner with rainbow white supremacists or any of these groups. So to get into it, listen, bottom line here, do I feel sorry for these white women now and what's going on and what they're going through every day with white men being abused, family annihilators, Mayo monsters, doing the most horrible things to them, taking them out and their children. And these are the men who have it easier than any other man in the world, most access to anything. And they're still doing that to these white women. These white men are tearing them up. Do I feel sorry for them? No, I don't feel sorry for them. I can't. Do I want this to happen? No, it's wrong. I don't want this to be done to anybody. It's terrible. It's not right. But when you're a black person, it's hard to jump out the window and put your nose in other people's business like Frederick Douglass did. We learned that from him, and we see what we get in return. You know what I'm saying? We don't want this to happen. We don't do things like this. This is not a cultural thing. Well, will we do that? Yeah, we know black men do this type of stuff also, but is it a bottom line as far as the culture? Not at all. This stuff is happening with the most successful people who have the most advantage, it was set up for them like that, of course. I'm not saying they're successful because they work for it. They made it set up for them like that. And yet they're still doing things like this. You know what I mean? Every day. So I don't feel sorry for these white women in America. And I'm not the one that wants this to happen either. That's just what it is. We learned this from the history. What our history has showed us is, at the core, these white women, they do not care about white supremacy. They don't care about being evil and being Satanists. They just want the opportunity to be able to exercise it with the same amount of power that white men have. That's what they want. At the end of the day, they have their knuckles dragging on the ground as well. So that's what it is, people. Get in the comments. Let me know what you know about this, what you think about this. Link in the description to the masterpiece, The N-Word is No Secret in the Service. Also link to the email list. Go ahead and holler at that. Easy.